Two Starliner astronauts have been stuck in space for more than 2 months as Boeing and NASA work on solutions to get them home.
NASA has decided that Butch and Sonny will return with Crew 9 next February.
After 9 weeks on the International Space Station, NASA now says mechanical issues with the Starliner could turn their planned 8-day mission into 8 months.
Elon Musk is getting ready to share some big news about Boeing Starliner, and it sounds like it could be unfortunate. Right now, 2 astronauts are trapped on the International Space Station, missing out on family holidays. They've been up there way longer than expected because NASA isn't sure the Starliner can bring them back safely. What happened to the stranded astronauts on the Starliner? And why does Elon Musk say they are not with us anymore? Get ready, Elon Musk's upcoming announcement might reveal an unexpected twist in the astronaut saga aboard the Starliner. Looming dangers. Things are already tough for the 2 astronauts on the ISS. Their mission was supposed to last just over a week, but now they've been up there for 8 months. NASA decided to keep them in space until February rather than risk their safety on the troubled Starliner. But the biggest threat may not be the extra time in space or the Starliner's technical problems. There could be a hidden danger building up within the station itself, one that might only show its true face as more time goes by. As time ticks on, a hidden danger aboard the ISS prepares to emerge, threatening more than just the mission. Even some people at Boeing are worried about the future of the Starliner program. One employee admitted things look bad, but no one knows what will happen next. Boeing has faced many problems with the Starliner since 2019. The spacecraft was originally supposed to return the astronauts to Earth by July 4th, but now it looks like they'll be stuck in space for the upcoming holidays and even the new year. But that's not the worst part. Boeing staff are increasingly frustrated because they now have to rely on their competitor, SpaceX, for help. Many feel embarrassed and upset by NASA's choice to depend on a rival for crucial support. Despite this internal tension, Boeing insists that the Starliner is still capable of bringing the astronauts back safely. However, after 2 months of rigorous tests while the spacecraft was docked at the ISS, NASA turned to SpaceX due to growing concerns over issues like helium leaks and problems with the thrusters. Boeing is now focused on making sure the Starliner can return safely to Earth, protecting both the crew and the spaceship. However, the company is facing serious financial challenges, with costs running about $1.5 billion over the original $4.5 billion contract with NASA. There's still hope that the Starliner could become a second option for taking astronauts to the ISS alongside SpaceX's Crew Dragon. But here's the twist. Space exploration has always been a mix of big successes and serious challenges. From the groundbreaking Apollo missions to today's private ventures, the journey into space has been marked by both victory and difficulty. Elon Musk, as the head of SpaceX, has played a big role in shaping the industry. Yet the problems Boeing faces with the Starliner raise important questions about the future of space exploration. Back in the early 2000s, space missions were mostly run by government agencies like NASA, Russia's Roscosmos, and the European Space Agency, ESA. But things started to change when private companies got involved. One of the first was SpaceX, founded by Elon Musk in 2002, with the goal of lowering the cost of space travel and eventually making it possible for humans to live on Mars. SpaceX quickly became a major player in the space industry. At the same time, Boeing, a long-established leader in aerospace, decided to jump into the space race as well. Teaming up with NASA, Boeing developed the CST-100 Starliner, a spacecraft designed to transport astronauts to the ISS and beyond. However, the ongoing struggles with the Starliner highlight the complex mix of technology, competition, and the broader goals of human space exploration. It shows just how challenging and risky it is to venture beyond our planet. Boeing's Starliner was supposed to be a strong competitor to SpaceX's Dragon capsule, creating an exciting race within NASA's Commercial Crew program. This program was launched to bring back astronaut launches from U.S. soil after the space shuttle was retired in 2011. NASA wanted several private companies to create their own spacecraft to send astronauts into space. But Boeing's path with the Starliner has been full of problems right from the start. Its first test flight in December of 2019, which didn't have a crew on board, went off course because of a software glitch. The spacecraft didn't reach the planned orbit, but did manage to safely return to Earth. Although it wasn't a complete failure, this mistake drew a lot of criticism towards Boeing. Later investigations by NASA and Boeing found more software problems, some of which were quite dangerous, leading to a need for more testing before any astronauts could use the Starliner. Boeing stayed committed to fixing these issues and planned another test flight without a crew in 2021. But then new issues with the spacecraft's propulsion system came up, causing even more delays. Things got worse in early 2023 when a group of astronauts got stuck on the International Space Station, ISS, because the Starliner wasn't ready for their planned return. This unexpected delay created a major problem for NASA and its partners, since the ISS is not set up for people to stay much longer than planned. Supplies started running low, and the health of the crew was at risk. On top of that, the psychological toll of not knowing when they could come home was tough on the astronauts. To handle the situation, NASA and SpaceX quickly came up with an emergency plan to use SpaceX's Dragon capsule, which had been successfully flying manned missions since 2020. Even though there were some worries about whether it was right for a rescue mission, they decided to go ahead with the preparations. But then, in early 2024, things took a surprising turn. Elon Musk announced at a press conference that SpaceX had found some serious flaws in the Starliner's design that Boeing hadn't publicly mentioned. Musk said these flaws could be very dangerous for any crew aboard the Starliner, but that wasn't the worst part. As SpaceX and NASA worked together on the emergency rescue, they found several problems with the Starliner's engine and life support systems. Musk pointed out that these issues could lead to major failures under certain conditions, putting astronaut lives at risk. This news led to heated discussions, with Boeing and NASA scrambling to deal with these concerns while also defending the Starliner's design. Public trust in Boeing started to drop as more people began to doubt the Starliner's safety and Boeing's honesty. The controversy over Musk's claims put a big question mark over the Starliner program, leading to more criticism and calls for a thorough review or even a complete halt to the program in favor of using only SpaceX's Dragon capsule for future missions. To try to save its reputation in the Starliner program, Boeing launched a detailed investigation to fix the problems. They worked closely with NASA to improve safety measures and carried out additional tests on the Starliner systems. Despite these efforts, many people were still not convinced. This incident also raised doubts about NASA's Commercial Crew Program, which was supposed to be a great example of how the government and private companies could work together to boost competition and innovation in space travel. Now, there were questions about whether the program was actually effective and whether private companies were really following strict safety rules. But this wasn't the only challenge. As debates continued, NASA and SpaceX moved forward with their plan to rescue the astronauts stuck on the ISS. This mission, which had a lot at stake, showed just how complicated things could get when innovation, competition, and safety all intersect in modern space exploration. It highlighted the need for honesty and reliability in these groundbreaking efforts. Meanwhile, Boeing found itself in a tough spot, trying to rebuild trust and fix its reputation. They knew they had to prove that the Starliner was safe, not just to NASA, but also to the public. They worked day and night to make things right, but the shadow of doubt still hung over them. The big question now was whether they could come back from this setback and continue to be a player in the space industry, or if this would mark a turning point where they would have to step back and let SpaceX take the lead. Let's see how a brave rescue mission offers some hope in the middle of these tough times. Teamwork in orbit. In March of 2024, SpaceX carried out a challenging rescue mission, sending their Dragon capsule to bring astronauts back from the International Space Station, ISS. This operation needed perfect teamwork between the astronauts on the ISS, NASA's mission control, and SpaceX's team. After some tense moments, the Dragon capsule successfully connected with the ISS, and the astronauts were safely returned to Earth, ending their long and difficult time in space. This mission was a big win for SpaceX, proving their skills and strengthening their reputation. But it also highlighted some ongoing problems within NASA's Commercial Crew Program, especially the issues with Boeing Starliner. This situation pushed NASA to rethink how they work with private companies to make sure space missions are safer and more reliable. After these events, there was a lot of talk about the need for honesty and responsibility in space missions. The discovery of hidden flaws in the Starliner's design showed why it's so important to have strict safety checks, especially when people's lives are at risk. The debate about the role of private companies in space grew stronger, with some arguing that NASA should focus more on safety and oversight rather than just competition and cost-cutting. The goal should be to reduce the risks that come with giving important missions to private firms. But this wasn't the only challenge. The rescue mission also showed how important international cooperation is in space. The ISS is a project that involves many countries, and this incident proved that we need well-coordinated global efforts and solid emergency plans to handle crises. This raised important questions about how these lessons might shape future rules and practices in space exploration. After the trouble with the Starliner, both Boeing and SpaceX faced important turning points. Boeing had to work hard to rebuild trust in the Starliner program and fix the technical problems that had put their spacecraft in doubt. They did a full review and upgrade of the Starliner's safety features, but concerns about its future reliability for manned missions remained. On the other hand, SpaceX strengthened its position as a leader in the space industry, especially after their successful rescue mission with the Dragon capsule. With a strong record of safe and effective missions, SpaceX aimed to keep up their high standards while also working on bigger projects like the Starship and plans to explore Mars. But this wasn't the worst part. The issues with the Starliner brought to light bigger challenges in the space industry, like the need for constant innovation, more investment in new technologies, and tougher safety rules to protect astronauts as we continue to explore space. The incident was a strong reminder of the dangers of space travel and showed how important it is to have clear and careful practices in place for all space activities. It also stressed the need for thorough checks and outside reviews of safety procedures, especially as private companies start taking on bigger roles in space missions. Moreover, the situation highlighted the importance of having solid emergency plans. The successful rescue of the astronauts was proof that quick and coordinated responses to space emergencies can be very effective. Moving forward, it will be essential for both government space agencies and private companies to keep developing, improving, and regularly updating their emergency strategies to be ready for any problems that could happen during space missions. Now let's explore how teamwork in space missions is crucial for safety and progress. Charting the stars. As we push further into space, it's clear that working together with other countries and space agencies is more important than ever. This kind of international cooperation is key to making sure space missions are successful and safe. But the challenges of exploring space don't stop there. The future of space exploration is full of exciting possibilities, but also big hurdles. The problems with Boeing Starliner remind us that there are always risks, but they also show the determination and creativity of the space community. As we move forward, new technologies and investments will shape this field, with companies like SpaceX leading ambitious projects like the Starship and even plans to explore and settle on Mars. At the same time, many other private companies and government organizations are working on their own projects. These range from missions to the moon to creating new living spaces in space. Each journey into space teaches us valuable lessons that help us improve our methods and technology. But this wasn't the only challenge. As the space industry grows, it's crucial to find a balance between exciting new ideas and the safety of everyone involved in space travel. This balance will need all the people and organizations in the space sector to work together, and a strong commitment to the highest safety and honesty standards. Space travel is risky by nature, but it also shows what humans can achieve when we push our limits. As we look ahead, exploring space remains a thrilling but challenging adventure that continues to capture our imaginations. Meanwhile, we are reminded of how unpredictable and dangerous travel can be by the tragic story of Flight MH370. On that flight, there were more than 200 people from all walks of life. More than half of them were Chinese nationals, including a group of famous calligraphers returning from an exhibition. There were also 2 Iranians traveling under false names, an Indonesian ready to start a new job, and a Malaysian couple coming back from their wedding celebration. The flight crew was led by Zahari Ahmad Shah, a pilot with over 30 years of experience, and his co-pilot, Fari Abdul Hamid. In the cargo hold were all sorts of goods, from electronics to mangosteens, a fruit loved for its bright purple skin and sweet taste. But what touched people the most were the personal stories of those on board. Among them was Philip Wood, an executive at IBM who was thinking of moving to Malaysia, and Patrick Gomez, a flight supervisor with 35 years of service. Each person on that plane had their own dreams and plans that were never realized. But that wasn't the worst part. The disappearance of Flight MH370 on March 8, 2014, with 239 people on board, became one of the biggest search and rescue missions in aviation history. This Boeing 777 disappeared from radar shortly after taking off from Kuala Lumpur, headed for Beijing. This led to a massive and expensive search, and many theories were put forward, from hijacking to technical failures. But despite all the investigations, no clear answer was found at the time. Years later, there was a breakthrough suggesting that the plane's final resting place was deep in the ocean, giving some clues about what might have happened. The long search brought a lot of pain to the families of those on board, leaving them in deep grief. Even after the official search ended, private and amateur efforts continued as people kept searching for answers. But even 10 years later, the fate of MH370 is still largely a mystery. Some experts, like Richard Godfrey, a former British aerospace engineer, and Vincent Lin, a researcher who once worked at the University of Tasmania, believe the plane's remains are in a remote, deep part of the ocean that was missed by the formal searches. What made the incident even more chilling was how suddenly it happened. During a routine handover from Malaysian to Vietnamese airspace, MH370 simply disappeared from radar screens. This was the last known contact, adding to the mystery of its fate. Data shows that after losing contact, the plane may have continued flying for another 7 hours. The Australian Transport Safety Bureau, at the request of Malaysian authorities, led the search. For over 1,000 days, they searched the oceans and analyzed data. But the exact location of Flight MH370 is still unknown. In a time when we rely on advanced technology and constant surveillance, this uncertainty is especially troubling. As the search dragged on with no clear answers, many theories began to surface, similar to those seen after other big mysteries like the events of 9/11, the death of Princess Diana, or the assassination of JFK. At first, there were many ideas about what happened to MH370, with some thinking it was brought down by foul play, like other aircraft incidents. But as time passed and other events, like the crash of Flight MH17, took the spotlight, many of these theories faded, leaving only unanswered questions and a sense of unease. But this wasn't the only mystery. There are still many theories about what happened to MH370. It is unusual for a large plane, like a Boeing 777, to disappear without a trace. One theory suggested that MH370 was mistaken for MH17, which was shot down over Ukraine. Some people pointed out that photos of the wreckage had similar window patterns and the same placement of the Malaysian flag, but experts later pointed out differences that disproved this idea. Another theory, which also didn't hold up, claimed that the bodies found at the MH17 crash site had been dead for days before the crash. This led to a wild idea that MH370 was filled with dead bodies to make it look like MH17. Again, aviation experts dismissed this theory. A different idea came from Lieutenant General Thomas McInerney, a retired U.S. military officer, who suggested that MH370 might have been hijacked to Pakistan as part of a plan to attack the U.S. or its allies. However, this too was debunked when experts showed that the plane most likely ended up in the southern Indian Ocean. Some theories focused on the 20 employees from Freescale Semiconductor who were on board MH370. A few conspiracy theorists thought that the U.S. might have intercepted the plane to stop these employees from sharing sensitive information with China. Others speculated that China might have taken the plane to question these employees about possible American spying. There was even a theory that Iranians using stolen passports were targeting Freescale's technology. Freescale later explained that the passengers were simply technical staff traveling to a semiconductor factory. Conspiracy theorists also noted that none of the 4 people with key technology patents were on the flight. At the same time, security expert Hugo Teso showed that it was possible to hijack a plane using a smartphone and a custom app, raising new concerns about flight safety. Dr. Sally Leavesley suggested that uncertified flight equipment, possibly accessed through a USB stick or smartphone, could have been used to take control of the plane. However, the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, considered this unlikely, saying that pilots could override such attempts. But this wasn't the worst part. Other theories considered a mechanical failure or deliberate actions by Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, as suggested by flight safety expert Steve Lindells. Still, none of these explanations fully explain the fate of MH370. The plane, which took off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport and was last seen on military radar flying south for about 6 hours, could have been controlled manually by autopilot or through its navigation computer. Many questions remain, such as why there were no radio communications if the pilots were unconscious. The aircraft had backup electrical systems, and in an emergency, pilots should have been able to send a distress signal. If there had been a fire in the cockpit, emergency protocols would have been followed, but it seems unlikely the plane could have flown for hours afterward. The mystery only deepens because there was no distress call, and it is rare for pilots to intentionally cause a crash. The disappearance of MH370 led to new rules for better tracking of planes, especially during emergencies, to prevent something like this from happening again. The long and expensive international search in the Indian Ocean has not yet found the main wreckage, leaving many to wonder if the pilot deliberately made the plane disappear, a deeply troubling idea. Evidence like the pilot's simulator showing a route heading into the Indian Ocean supports this theory. While studies show that many pilots experience depression, there is no direct link to this case. Since then, the aviation industry has increased its focus on mental health, making sure pilots have regular psychological checkups. What do you think really happened to MH370? Could there be a truth still hidden from us? Leave your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more discussions like this.